There is a particular sound that a filing cabinet makes when you close it properly. Not a slam. Never a slam. A firm, decisive click. The kind of sound that tells you the roller bearings caught, the lock tab engaged, and 30 years of case law just settled into its correct resting place behind tamper-proof steel. I have heard that sound approximately 400,000 times in my career. I know this because I once did the math during a slow afternoon in December, back when slow afternoons still existed at Whitmore, Castellan and Briggs. 400,000 clicks. Each one a case. Each one a client's life, or livelihood, or liberty, tucked into a hanging folder with a color-coded tab I had cut and labeled by hand. Green for active litigation. Blue for discovery phase. Red for approaching deadlines. Yellow for appeals. And black. Black tabs were for the files that could end careers if they were ever lost. I had a lot of black tabs. My name is Gloria Marchetti, and for 31 years I was the senior legal secretary at one of the most respected litigation firms in the city. When I say I was the senior legal secretary, I do not mean I was the oldest. I mean I was the architecture. I was the load-bearing wall. The partners came and went. The associates burned out or made equity. The paralegals rotated through like seasons, but I remained. I was the one who knew that Judge Harmon in courtroom 4B required all motions to be printed on 20-pound bond paper and stapled in the upper left corner at a precise 45-degree angle, not because it was written in any rule, but because his clerk would reject anything else, and you would lose your filing window. I was the one who knew that the county recorder's office closed 15 minutes early on the third Friday of every month, because Dolores at the front desk left to pick up her grandchildren. And if you didn't have your lien filings in by 3:45, you were waiting until Monday. I was the one who maintained a calendar system so precise, so layered, so utterly failsafe, that in 3 decades, Whitmore, Castellan and Briggs had never, not once, missed a statute of limitations deadline, not a single one. In litigation, that is not just a record. That is a miracle. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the day the miracle ended. It was a Tuesday in March, when I first heard the name Kyle Atterbury. I remember, it was a Tuesday, because Tuesdays were when I reconciled the filing log against the court docket, a task that took me approximately 90 minutes, and a cup of Earl Grey with exactly 1 sugar. I was halfway through the Earl Grey when Margaret Yoon, one of the junior partners, appeared in my doorway looking like someone had canceled her subscription to Oxygen. "Gloria," she said, and the way she said it told me everything, not the specifics, but the weight. "They hired a managing partner," she said. "From outside." I set down my tea. In 31 years, Whitmore, Castellan and Briggs had never hired a managing partner from outside the firm. The role had always gone to a senior partner, who understood the culture, the clients, the institutional memory that a firm like ours ran on. Hiring from outside meant the equity partners had decided something needed to change. And in my experience, when lawyers decide something needs to change, the something is usually the people who have been keeping everything from falling apart. "His name is Kyle Atterbury," Margaret continued. "Harvard Law, class of 2017. Then he went and got an MBA at Wharton. He spent 3 years at a legal tech startup in San Francisco before joining a consulting firm that specializes in," and I am quoting directly from his LinkedIn, "optimizing legacy professional service organizations for the digital-first era." I picked my tea back up. "And the equity partners hired this person," I said, "to manage a 40-year-old litigation firm." Margaret nodded. "He starts Monday." I took a long sip. The Earl Grey had gone cold, which I took as an omen. Kyle Atterbury arrived the following Monday with the energy of a man who had read 3 books about disruption and mistaken them for wisdom. He was 29 years old, which I note not out of ageism, but because in a profession built on precedent, 29-year-old managing partner is itself without precedent. He wore slim-fit suits with no tie, brown leather shoes that probably cost more than my first car, And he carried a laptop so thin it appeared to be a single sheet of aluminum that had developed ambitions. He shook my hand on his first morning and said, "Gloria, I have heard you are the backbone of this place," and I knew immediately that he intended to perform surgery on the spine. The first 2 weeks were what I would call the observation period, though I suspect he would have called it an audit. He sat in on meetings, he reviewed billing structures, he requested access to every filing system, every calendar, every database. I gave him access because he was, technically, my superior, and I have never once in my career refused a legitimate request from a partner. I have, however, noted when those requests carried the distinct aroma of future catastrophe, the way you can smell a storm an hour before it arrives if you have lived in the same climate long enough. On his 15th day, Kyle called an all-staff meeting in the large conference room. He had prepared a slide deck. 47 slides. I know because I counted them while he spoke, which I did because counting gave me something to do with my hands other than what they wanted to do. The presentation was titled, Whitmore 2.0 a leaner, faster, future, ready. It proposed, among other things, eliminating the physical filing system entirely. Every document would be digitized, uploaded to a cloud-based case management platform he had selected, and managed through automated workflow software. The filing cabinets, my filing cabinets, the ones I had organized and maintained and guarded like a dragon guarding a hoard of irreplaceable treasure, would be removed. The filing room would become a collaboration lounge, with standing desks and a kombucha tap. He also proposed reducing the secretarial staff from 4 to 1. That one, he made clear with a meaningful look in my direction, would be retrained as a legal workflow coordinator, and would primarily be responsible for scanning documents and uploading them to the platform. I raised my hand. Kyle smiled at me the way people smile at their grandmother when she asks how the internet works. "Gloria," he said, "I know change is hard." I said, "Change isn't hard. Losing a case because a document was miscategorized in an unfamiliar system is hard. Missing a filing deadline because an automated calendar didn't account for a court holiday is hard. Explaining to a client that their medical malpractice suit was dismissed because someone forgot to upload the expert witness disclosure is hard. Change is just a word. Consequences are what's hard." The room was very quiet. Kyle's smile did not waver. "That," he said, "is exactly the kind of legacy thinking we need to move past. The platform has built-in deadline tracking. It's AI enhanced. It doesn't forget. I have never trusted anything that is described as AI enhanced. I have, however, trusted my own calendar system, which had functioned without failure since 1993. But I said nothing more. I had made my point. He had heard it and dismissed it. The record would show that I warned him. Over the next 6 weeks, the transition began. The cloud platform was installed. Training sessions were conducted, though calling them training sessions is generous. They were 2-hour webinars run by a 24-year-old customer success representative named Bryce who kept saying, "Super intuitive," while demonstrating an interface that required 11 fits to file a single document. The other 3 secretaries, Rosemary, who had been with the firm for 18 years, Angela, who had been there for 12, and David, who had been there for 7, were given their severance packages. Rosemary cried in the filing room. Angela didn't cry, but she took the philodendron she had been growing on her desk for a decade, and the way she carried it out, cradled against her chest, was worse than crying. I was reassigned legal workflow coordinator. My new desk was in what had been the supply closet, reconfigured with a scanning station and a monitor. The filing cabinets were removed over a weekend. 47 cabinets, each one 4 drawers deep, each drawer containing between 80 and 120 files, each file containing the meticulous work product of decades. They were taken to an off-site storage facility, where they would be archived pending digitization, which I understood to mean they would sit in a warehouse until everyone forgot they existed. I want you to understand something about what happened next, because it is the part of the story that people always misunderstand. I did not sabotage anything. I did not delete files. I did not hide documents. I did not do a single thing wrong. What I did was far more devastating than any of those things. I followed Kyle Atterbury's instructions to the letter. He wanted all documents uploaded to the platform, using the platform's default categorization system. I used the platform's default categorization system, even though it had no provision for the 37 custom subcategories I had developed over 3 decades to track the specific procedural requirements of the 14 judges our firm regularly appeared before. He wanted deadlines managed by the platform's automated tracking. I let the platform's automated tracking manage the deadlines, even though the platform pulled its court holiday schedule from a generic national database that did not include the 3 local court holidays specific to our jurisdiction. He wanted me to stop maintaining my handwritten backup calendar. I stopped maintaining my handwritten backup calendar, even though that calendar had saved the firm from at least a dozen missed deadlines over the years, each one a potential malpractice claim. I did exactly what I was told. Every single instruction, followed with precision. I documented every instruction in writing. I sent confirmation emails. I sixed Kyle on every one. I created a paper trail so clean, so thorough, so meticulously organized that it was, in its own way, my finest filing job. The first crack appeared in week 4 of the new system. A motion for summary judgment in the Delacroix case was filed under general correspondence instead of active motions, because the platform's auto-categorization algorithm read the word "Dear" in the cover letter and classified the entire document as correspondence. The motion sat in the wrong folder for 6 days. When the associate handling the case finally found it, the response deadline had been cut to 48 hours. They made it, but barely, and the brief was sloppy. I know it was sloppy because I heard the associate crying in the bathroom afterward. I said nothing. I had been told the platform was AI enhanced. I had been told it didn't forget. The second crack appeared in week 7. The platform's automated deadline tracker did not account for the local court's Lincoln, Washington combined holiday, which our jurisdiction observes on a Monday in February that the national calendar does not recognize. 2 filing deadlines were calculated as due on that Monday. The courthouse was closed. The filings could not be made until Tuesday, which was 1 day late. One of those filings was a notice of appeal. If you miss a notice of appeal deadline, you do not get a second chance. You do not get an extension. You get a malpractice claim and a client who has lost their right to challenge a verdict forever. Margaret Yoon caught that one at 11 o'clock on the Friday night before the holiday weekend because she happened to be reviewing her own case files at home and noticed the date. She drove to the courthouse at 6 in the morning on Friday and filed it by hand. She told me about it the following week, her voice flat and exhausted, and asked me if I had known. I told her the truth. I told her I had seen the deadline on the platform. I told her the platform showed it as due on Monday. I told her I had been instructed to rely on the platform. I told her I had sent an email to Kyle 3 weeks earlier, noting that the platform's holiday calendar might not include local court holidays, and that Kyle had responded, and I am quoting from the email I had printed and placed in a personal file at home. Gloria, the platform is enterprise grade. Let's trust the technology and move forward. Margaret stared at me for a long time. Then she said, "You kept the email." "I keep everything," I said. "It's what I do." The catastrophe. The real one, the one that could not be caught by a partner working late on a Friday, arrived on a Wednesday in June. The Osterfeld case. It was the firm's largest active matter, a medical malpractice suit valued at $4.7 million. The client was a woman named Teresa Osterfeld who had suffered permanent nerve damage during a routine surgery. She had 2 children. She could no longer work. The case was strong, the liability was clear, and the only thing standing between Teresa Osterfeld and the compensation she desperately needed was the procedural machinery of the court system, which required, among other things, that the plaintiff's expert witness disclosures be filed no later than 120 days before trial. That deadline was June 14th. The platform had the deadline listed as June 24th. A 10-day discrepancy. I noticed it in April, when I was scanning the case documents into the system. I checked the court's scheduling order. June 14th. I checked the platform. June 24th. The platform had miscalculated because the original trial date had been moved once, and while the court's amended scheduling order reflected the new dates, the platform had only partially updated. It pulled the new trial date but recalculated the disclosure deadline using the original baseline, creating a 10-day error. I sent an email to Kyle. I described the discrepancy. I recommended that someone verify the deadline against the court's scheduling order. Kyle replied the same day. His response was 4 sentences long. The first sentence thanked me for my diligence. The second sentence reminded me that the platform's deadline calculations were algorithmically verified. The third sentence suggested I complete the scanning backlog rather than manually auditing the system's outputs. The fourth sentence ended with a smiley face emoji. I printed the email. I placed it in my file. I continued scanning. On June 15th, one day after the actual deadline, the lead associate on the Osterfeld case, a sharp and deeply overworked young woman named Catherine Vu, walked into my scanning closet and asked me where the expert witness disclosure filing confirmation was. She had gone to check the platform and couldn't find it. I told her I hadn't filed it. I told her the platform showed the deadline as June 24th. I told her I had flagged the discrepancy in April. I told her to check with Kyle. What happened over the next 72 hours is something I can only describe as the legal equivalent of watching a ship take on water. Catherine Vo confirmed the actual deadline with the court. She turned white. She went to the senior partner handling the case, Richard Castellan, whose family name was on the letterhead. Richard Castellan, a man I had worked with for 28 years, a man who trusted my filing system the way a pilot trusts his instruments, called an emergency meeting. Kyle Atterbury was summoned. I was not in that meeting, but I was told about it in detail afterward, because the walls of the conference room are not as thick as the partners believe, and because the shouting was loud enough to be heard from the collaboration lounge, where the kombucha tap had already broken and been replaced by a water cooler that no one had bothered to refill. Richard Castellan reportedly asked Kyle how a $4.7 million case had been allowed to miss a critical deadline. Kyle reportedly said, "The platform's calculations should have been correct." Catherine Vu reportedly produced my email from April, the one where I had flagged the discrepancy, and Kyle's response dismissing it. Richard Castellan reportedly read Kyle's response aloud, including the smiley face emoji, and then sat in silence for approximately 30 seconds, which anyone who knows Richard Castellan will tell you is the most dangerous thing he can do. The firm filed an emergency motion to extend the deadline, citing excusable neglect. The motion was denied. The judge noted that the scheduling order was unambiguous, that the deadline had been clearly stated, and that a law firm's internal technology failures did not constitute excusable neglect under the rules of civil procedure. The expert witness disclosures were stricken. Without expert testimony, the medical malpractice case collapsed. Teresa Osterfeld's $4.7 million case was effectively dead. Teresa Osterfeld hired a new attorney. That attorney filed a malpractice suit against Whitmore, Castellan and Briggs. The malpractice suit sought the full value of the lost case, $4.7 million, plus additional damages for emotional distress and loss of earning capacity. The firm's malpractice insurer launched an investigation. The investigation uncovered the Lincoln, Washington holiday near miss, the Delacroix misfile, and 14 other instances where the platform's automated systems had produced errors that were caught only by luck or individual diligence. The investigation also uncovered my emails. All of them. The entire chain. Every warning I had sent, every dismissive response Kyle had returned, every timestamp, every read receipt. Kyle Atterbury was terminated on a Thursday in August. He was given 60 minutes to collect his personal belongings. He did not, as far as I know, take the kombucha tap. The equity partners held an emergency session that evening. Richard Castellan called me at home. Did not start with pleasantries. He said, "Gloria, I need you to come back. Not to the scanning closet. Back to your desk. We need the filing system rebuilt." I let the silence sit for 5 seconds. Not out of pettiness. Out of precision. I needed him to hear the weight of what he was asking. "The filing cabinets are in a warehouse in Secaucus," I said. "I know," he said. "The physical files haven't been maintained in 4 months." "I know. Rosemary, Angela, and David are gone." He paused. "I know," he said again, quieter. I told him I would come back. But I had conditions. First, my title would be restored to Senior Legal Secretary, because that is what I am and that is what the role requires. Second, my salary would be increased to reflect the actual scope of my responsibilities, which had been undervalued for at least a decade. Third, Rosemary and Angela would be offered their positions back with full back pay and a formal apology. David had already taken a position at another firm and was happy, so I did not push for his return, but I made sure they sent him a letter. Fourth, no technology platform would be implemented in my filing system without my written approval. Not input. Not consultation. Approval. Richard Castellan agreed to every condition in under 10 seconds. It took me 3 weeks to rebuild the filing system. 3 weeks of 14-hour days, of driving to the warehouse in Secaucus and opening boxes that smelled like damp cardboard and neglect, of cross-referencing 4 months of digital entries against court records to identify every error, every misfiled document, every deadline that had silently drifted out of alignment, while the AI-enhanced platform hummed along in its confident, algorithmic ignorance. Rosemary came back. Angela came back. We worked together the way we always had, with Earl Grey and color-coded tabs, and a handwritten calendar that could not be confused by a local court holiday, because I had written every local court holiday on it in red ink. 31 years running. The malpractice suit settled. I was not told the exact figure, but the firm's insurance premiums tripled the following year, which tells you everything you need to know. 3 clients left during the chaos. 2 came back after I personally called their offices to assure them that the filing system was restored. The third did not come back, and I do not blame them. I think about Kyle Atterbury sometimes. Not with anger. I was never angry. Anger is for people who are surprised by incompetence. I have worked in a law firm for over 3 decades. I am not surprised by incompetence. What I feel is something closer to exhaustion. The particular wariness of watching someone mistake confidence for competence, watching them dismantle something they do not understand, because they cannot see its value, watching them ignore warnings from the people who do the actual work, because those people do not have the right degree, or the right title, or the right vocabulary of disruption, and optimization and future readiness. Kyle Atterbury knew how to build a slide deck. He knew how to talk about systems and platforms and scalability. He knew the language of efficiency. What he did not know, what he refused to learn, was that a law firm is not a technology company. A filing deadline is not a workflow metric. A client's case is not a data point. And a legal secretary who has spent 31 years learning the texture and rhythm and hidden machinery of a court system is not an obstacle to progress. She is the reason progress doesn't kill you. I am 61 years old. I will retire in 4 years. When I do, I will leave behind a filing system that contains every case Whitmore, Castellan and Briggs has handled since 1993. Every document, every deadline, every tab, color, coded and labeled in my handwriting. It will be, I suspect, the most complete institutional memory the firm has ever had or will ever have again. Someone will be hired to replace me. They will be younger. They will be given a platform, a software suite, a webinar led by someone named Bryce. And they will, if they are wise, also keep a handwritten calendar. Because systems fail. Algorithms miscalculate. Platforms crash, and update and recategorize your documents at 2 in the morning without asking. But a woman who has spent her life learning where every file belongs, who has memorized every deadline and every judge's preference, and every clerk's early departure on the third Friday of every month. That woman does not crash. She does not miscalculate. She does not need to be AI enhanced because she is, in the truest and most irreplaceable sense, intelligent enough already. I have closed 400,000 filing cabinets in my career. Each one made the same sound. A firm, decisive click, the sound of something being exactly where it belongs. I intend to keep making that sound for 4 more years. And then I will close my last drawer, hear that last click, and walk out the door into whatever comes next. But the files will stay. The files always stay.